Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. So even though I have taken this kind of break off of YouTube before, it feels like it's been years since I've last been on here. So you may be wondering where I've actually been. Well, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I've been busy with the amazing new Mario game, Mario Wonder, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys can relate. That game is perfection and a 10 out of 10 for me, but today we're actually not talking about Mario Wonder and actually talking about how Nintendo game sequels can be very controversial. Nintendo has made some weird choices in the past on which games they choose to make a sequel on. Some sequels are amazing and still being praised today, while other sequels, people, including me, wonder why Nintendo even bothered making this in the first place. So how do we go from these incredible sequels to getting the sequel of 1-2 Switch? Today I'm taking a deep, unnecessary look at Nintendo sequels. And also, I'm not finna lie, I'm a little sick right now. But you know what?
Never back down, never what?
Never give up.
Never back down, never what?
Never give up.
That's right!
I may be sick, but that does not stop me from doing YouTube. Haha, y'all thought. Y'all phone's not really on 10%. Or at least I hope it's not. But you know what? Now that I got your attention, please subscribe and hit that bell right now. Because I only have 1.3% of people watching me. That's not good. So please, let's get those numbers up. And now, let's get on with the video. The first sequel Nintendo ever made was a sequel to Donkey Kong Jr., which was released in arcades in September 1982. I mean, Donkey Kong being one of the biggest moneymakers Nintendo has ever had, it would make sense for them to do a sequel. Donkey Kong Jr. obviously focuses on, yeah, you guessed it, Donkey Kong Jr. They actually made Mario the enemy here, as Mario kidnapped Donkey Kong and DK Jr. has to go save him. A little weird, but what could they have done? I mean, if they just made a sequel to Donkey Kong with the same plot, just with new stages, it probably wouldn't have done well. DK Jr. did well, but it was practically nothing like the original was. But hey, it led to a DK3, and thus a world of Donkey Kong was born. But I may mention that DK3 was released in the midst of the infamous video game crash in 1983. It didn't do as well as the last two for probably only two reasons. One, the video game crash, and two, the game didn't feature Mario at all. It featured Stanley from the Game & Watch game Greenhouse. And bonus, it wasn't really a platformer, more of a shooter type game. It did well, but not really up to Nintendo standards. But Nintendo did not give up, as they are the ones that ended the video game crash with the Nintendo Entertainment System and gave us the most popular game in history, Super Mario Bros. Super Mario Bros. Sold 40.24 million copies, making it the best-selling game for the NES and the second best-selling Super Mario game. It was number 14 on Nintendo Power's 100 Best Nintendo Games of All Time list. IGN put it in their number 3 spot for their list of the top 100 NES games. And fast forwarding, there's even a street that was named after the game in 2010 in the city of Zaragoza in Spain. Before this, Nintendo has never seen anything like this, not even with Donkey Kong. So you know Nintendo was like, we are most definitely bringing Super Mario Bros. Back. So Nintendo made the true sequel to the game, Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels. That's where we meet this guy, Howard Phillips, who worked in Nintendo at the time and was set to test the game, but felt the game was too hard and punishing. Nintendo president at the time, and sorry if I pronounce this wrong, Minoru Awakawa, decided to only release the Lost Levels in Japan and reskin another Japan-only game, Doki Doki Panic, to a Mario game. Thus, Super Mario Bros. 2 USA was born. Despite it being a reskin, the game actually did pretty well. While the fame wasn't as big as the original, the fame was definitely still there. Then Super Mario Bros. 3 happened, and the rest is history. Nintendo also saw similar fame with the Legend of Zelda series. The original Zelda game released in 1987 in the US and sold 6.51 million copies, making it the 6th best-selling game on the NES. So you know that Nintendo said, we're coming back with this one too. Zelda 2: Adventure of Link releases in 1988 in the US. While it didn't do as well as the original, it still sold 4.38 million copies, making it the 8th best-selling NES game. The rest is pretty much history, with the Super Mario series and the Legend of Zelda series pretty much being equal to each other. Needless to say, Nintendo was killing it with their sequels at the time, and it went on with the Super Nintendo. The Super Nintendo jump-started the Donkey Kong Country series. DK Country, released in 1994 for the Super Nintendo, was successful solely on the reasons that it was the first time people saw DK in a new game after almost a decade, and it introduced us to a bunch of the Kong's family like Diddy Kong, Cranky Kong, Funky Kong, and Candy Kong. The game sold 9.3 million copies, making it the 3rd best-selling game for the Super Nintendo and the best-selling DK game overall. Nintendo said, yeah, we're most definitely bringing DK Country back too, and they did exactly that just a year later in 95. The sequel performed just as well. DK Country 2: Diddy Kong's Quest sold 4.37 million copies worldwide, making it the 6th best-selling game on the SNES and even the 2nd best-selling game in 96. I may also mention that the sequel to Super Mario World was released in 95 as well. Super Mario World 2: Yoshi's Island sold 4.12 million copies, becoming the 8th best-selling game on the SNES and the 5th best-selling game in 95. Basically throughout the 90s, Nintendo sequels were killing it, but there is one sequel that never came about of a very popular game, Super Mario 64. When Super Mario 64 released, the director, Shigeru Miyamoto, said there are a lot of things that he couldn't put in the original that he's putting in a never-before-released sequel. And one of those things was the multiplayer mode. It was originally going to be set to release on an N64 DD, the Nintendo 64 disc add-on. It was first released in Japan, and since it did so badly, they never released it in the US. And for that reason, the sequel was canned, and we probably will never see anything about it ever again. It's kind of similar to what happened in '95 to Star Fox 2, but Star Fox 2 did end up releasing years later. Star Fox 2 was the sequel to the famous original Star Fox, which instantly became a popular series in Nintendo, becoming famous for its amazing graphics for a 1993 game with the help of the then new Super FX chip, which was a 3D graphic accelerator. So like before, Nintendo said, we're bringing this back. But with the advancement made by 3D technology at the time, concerns started rising at Nintendo that Star Fox wouldn't do well because of the popularity of the first PlayStation, with their games being made with much more advanced 3D technology. Star Fox 2, which was fully completed at the time, was cancelled, and we wouldn't see it fully released until it was one of the games included in the Super NES Classic, which was released 22 years later. Other than those, sequels that were released in the 90s were successful: Mario Party 2, Banjo-Tooie, etc. The early 2000s will see the release of the GameCube, and the GameCube is home to probably the most successful sequel that Nintendo has ever had, and probably the most successful sequel ever, Super Smash Bros. Melee. This is one of those rare cases where a sequel is ultimately better than the original. With 13 new characters, new stages, new items, new modes, new techniques, it even introduced American audiences to Marth and Roy in the Fire Emblem series, which was originally a Japan exclusive series, and it's still being played at tournaments today. This is one of Nintendo's biggest games they have ever made. And that's not the only sequel Nintendo is home to. Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, the sequel to the original Paper Mario released for the N64 in 2000, also became majorly successful. Fans have always praised its plot, humor, battle system, you name it. It was the number 56 spot in the official Nintendo magazine 200 Greatest Nintendo Games list. It was in the 93rd spot for Edge's magazine's 100 Best Video Games list. It's even considered to be the best RPGs ever made and the best Paper Mario game. And now an official remake is going to be released on the Nintendo Switch 20 years after its original release. And while it didn't do as well as these two games, Pikmin 2 was very successful for the GameCube, with many fans praising about how it fixed problems the original had. The late 2000s also saw the Wii release, which is one of Nintendo's biggest consoles ever. Yeah, the Nintendo Switch is the best-selling console now, but the Wii is still the biggest. With Wii Sports becoming very popular due to the fact that it was bundled with every Wii console, Nintendo made Wii Sports Resort, which performed just as well. Having new sports to play all set on the beautiful island of Woohoo Island was the main reason for its success. It introduced players to the Wii Motion Plus, which was a Wii accessory that made motion controls on the Wii better. It sold 33.14 million copies, and it's the third best-selling game on the Wii. The Wii also saw New Super Mario Bros. Wii, the sequel to New Super Mario Bros. DS, one of the biggest New Super Mario games, selling 30.32 million copies, becoming the fourth best-selling game on the Wii. It was given a 40 out of 40 by the Famitsu magazine. And may I remind you, it was rare for the Famitsu magazine to give out 40 out of 40s for games. It won the best 2009 Wii game category numerous times at the Spike Video Game Awards, IGN, Game Trailers, Yahoo, and Nintendo Power. This wasn't the only sequel to perform well on the Wii either. Super Mario Galaxy 2 released a year after New Super Mario Bros. Wii in 2010. With Super Mario Galaxy being the more favorable 3D Mario, Nintendo said, bring it back, and they did exactly that and made it equally better. Numerous 10 out of 10s from IGN, Edge, Eurogamer, GameSpot, and Destructoid. Nintendo Power, Games Master, the official Nintendo magazine, Edge, and more all awarded Mario Galaxy 2 with Game of the Year in 2010. Also, numerous companies named it the Wii Game of the Year. IGN gave it the #1 spot for the best Wii game. Basically, from 1982 to 2011, Nintendo knew how to handle their sequels. And I haven't even mentioned the successful sequels that were also getting released on the 3DS at this time. Their next console, the Wii U, was practically a failure. While the sequels to the big franchises they made were successful, it was basically nothing compared to what they've done before. Don't get me wrong, I love some of the sequels released on the Wii U, but if we look back to the reviews on games like Mario Party 10, that's where we started getting mixed reviews. Reviews basically saying this isn't the Mario Party we know. I may also mention that at that point they've been saying that about Mario Party since Mario Party 8. Wii Party U, a sequel to Wii Party released in 2010, was also met with mixed reviews. I may also add that the original did better than the sequel. Mario Tennis Ultra Smash got some mixed to pretty much negative reviews. Both Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games Sochi 2014 and Rio 2016 were also met with pretty mixed reviews. These are just to name a few. Mostly during the entire Wii U's lifetime, Nintendo knew they had to do something about this. Not just about its sequels, but to their future games too. So 2017 came around and so did the Nintendo Switch. Nintendo and literally everyone else saw the success of the Nintendo Switch, even to this day. And of course, with the Switch came the opportunities of sequels. The first sequel we got for the Switch was Splatoon 2, instant success. Reasons being the game was so fun and possibly because at that time Splatoon was still kind of a new franchise, and here we are at Splatoon 3, which was also an instant success. Xenoblade Chronicles 2, released in December 2017, also did well, and it also got its third sequel in 2022 along with Splatoon 3. After that, it was about time to start making games for their big franchises. During this time, we got sequels of Super Mario Maker, we got Luigi's Mansion 3, Hyrule Warriors, Pokemon Snap, Fire Emblem Warriors, just to name a few, right? And they all did well. You may be like, okay, so they're back up and running again with their sequels like old times. Nintendo made another sequel to Wii Sports, Nintendo Switch Sports, and it got mixed reviews, mainly because the main focus wasn't on the Mii's like the last three games were. And also because they felt the game was too slow. Mario Strikers Battle League, which was pretty much the sequel to the last one, got mixed reviews because of the lack of single player content and just the lack of content in general. I may also mention that this is the time Nintendo fans started to map out Nintendo's strat of releasing unfinished games so they could put it in free updates or maybe even paid DLC. Even before this, Nintendo released sequels of games you've probably forgotten about or never even seen in your life. The next sequel Nintendo released was Bayonetta 3, and then Nintendo did the biggest sequel they have ever done since Melee, if not the biggest sequel they've ever done. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, the sequel to Breath of the Wild. Nintendo always knew that the sequel to Breath of the Wild would bring them the success and the money, and that's exactly what they did. There are multiple 10 out of 10s on the board. It's already been nominated for a lot of awards and won multiple awards. In fact, recently it was announced that this game has been nominated 5 times at this year's Game Awards, including Game of the Year. So far, it has sold 19.50 million copies. While it's lower than the original, that's literally amazing for the 6 months that it's been out. Nintendo knew they had to step it up, and they did exactly that. But then they just had to ruin it when they released this. Like, I genuinely want to go down to Nintendo headquarters and personally ask them who in their right mind asked for this. The original didn't even perform that well. I guess this brings me to my question, why does Nintendo barely make sequels of games we actually want, but instead make sequels of games that nobody even remembers or forgot? Nintendo, you have some big money opportunities here. Super Mario Odyssey released months after Breath of the Wild and did just as well. Why haven't we got a sequel to that yet? Because I know that'll be a game I will definitely be there for. We have ARMS, which released a couple months after 1-2 Switch and did way better than that. We still never got a sequel to that. The Captain Toad game, which was released 9 years ago for the Wii U, has no sequel. It has been ported to Switch, but still. And this might be a controversial idea considering Nintendo Switch Sports didn't do amazingly as people thought it would. You can make a sequel for Wii Party, Wii Play, and others. Yeah, you kind of rebooted Wii Fit with Ring Fit Adventure, which was a good game by the way. But what about the others? Nintendo, I just gave you 4 different ideas that could possibly be big money makers. What's the problem? I understand developing games could take a really long time, but it's never too late to start working on these things, especially for the next console. All in all, Nintendo is going to have its ups and downs, but they're a really good video game company. Their choice in making sequels is really rocky right now, but hopefully they'll come to their senses and realize that maybe Mario Odyssey does deserve a sequel. Alright, that's enough for me, but if you enjoyed this video and want to see more like this, consider hitting that subscribe button and hitting that bell, and I'll be seeing y'all in the next one. Peace.